The World Report on NewsX World. We'll start with a check of the top headlines this hour. The U.S. military shot down an Iranian drone after it aggressively approached the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. Washington says talks with Iran remain scheduled this week despite the incident. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton agreed to testify in the congressional investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, allowing them to avoid being found in contempt of Congress. Former UK Cabinet Minister Peter Mandelson has quit the House of Lords after leaked emails tied him to Jeffrey Epstein, while British police have opened a criminal probe into alleged misconduct in public office. U.S. Secretary Marco Rubio met India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar. Both leaders backed the new India-US trade deal and discussed cooperation on critical minerals and energy security. Donald Trump signed a roughly $1.2 trillion funding bill ending a short federal shutdown after a 17-14 House vote. Son of late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi has been killed. Forensic doctors examined the body of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi and determined that he died from gunshot wounds. Looking to ban social media for under-16s, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez says no more pretending that technology is neutral. In his first reaction after French authorities raid ex-offices in Paris, Elon Musk calls the raid a political attack amid deepfake and political interference probe. Alright viewers, let's start with now news on the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukrainian officials have said that Russian drone attacks killed 2 people and injured 15 in Zaporizhzhia and Kharkiv. According to Ukraine's foreign minister, Russia attacked Ukraine with 450 drones and over 60 missiles overnight. Ukrainian President Zelensky accused Russia of exploiting a US-backed energy truce to stockpile munitions and using them to attack Ukraine with hundreds of drones and a number of ballistic missiles a day before peace talks are set to resume in Abu Dhabi. Let's in fact listen in to what Zelensky said.
Ми очікуємо на реакцію Сполучених Штатів Америки на російські удари. Це була пропозиція саме Америки на час дипломатії і такої холодної зимової погоди припинити удари по енергетиці. Було прохання особисто від президента Сполучених Штатів. Ми бачимо, що Росія на це прохання відповіла рекордом балістики. Неповних 4 дні минуло з тижня, про які Росію просили. Це говорить і про все інше, що Росія обіцяє, чи ще може пообіцяти. Якщо їхнє слово не тримається вже зараз, то чого очікувати далі? Вони брехали і перед цією війною, повномасштабну війну Росія почала, намагаючись обманути всіх навколо про свої наміри і про Україну. І зараз навіть в таких деталях, в таких домовленостях з Америкою знову російський обман. Вони не виправні в Москві і хочуть скористатися саме холодом, бо не можуть підкорити нас, Україну.
Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said that Trump was unsurprised after Russia resumed strikes on Ukraine. Trump has also urged President Putin again to end the war.
I spoke with the president about it this morning, and his reaction was unfortunately unsurprised. These are 2 countries who have been engaged in a very brutal war for several years, a war that would have never started if the president were still in office. It started because of the weakness and incompetence of the previous president, Joe Biden.
Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has inspected a Kyiv thermal power plant damaged in overnight Russian attacks. And I welcome Dr. Asa Chadha, Associate Professor of International Relations from Kyoto in this discussion. Dr. Chadha, thanks very much for joining us. Trump is unsurprised by this strike. That's what Caroline Leavitt is saying. What does that really mean? Where are the peace talks then going if Trump is not even surprised with the continuous shellings? And what really remains the issue that has to be addressed, because the last sticking point was that of Donbass, and it is for Putin to accede some of the demands from the Ukrainian side as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it should be seen as a little bit of a setback in any possibility of being able to have a successful peace talk, because if United States, that has clearly changed its position from being a NATO ally or an ally to Ukraine to being more of a negotiator or a middle person trying to facilitate peace. If US feels unsurprised by one party in the conflict escalating the attacks, despite promising at some level to cease any attacks, given the winters, given the harsh conditions, given the energy security issues that most of Europe is facing around this time of the year, this is definitely a negative response, and something probably that is not very surprising, not very encouraging for Ukraine either, because President Zelensky has once again expressed that he's very, very concerned. He's expressed skepticism in this kind of a trilateral format peace talk that President Trump had earlier proposed. And thirdly, we must understand that this already was seen as a huge security crisis for the entire Europe, not just for Ukraine, not just for Ukraine's surrounding states, but for entire Europe, because they are looking at it as a complete breakdown of trust in terms of whether or not they can actually come with United States and Russia on the same table and negotiate any kind of peace. But there is one aspect that probably even US doesn't want to address here, which is that this is no longer just a war. There are humanitarian implications to the fact that a power plant was attacked. There are implications for this as a security crisis, not just for hard security, but also economic security, for energy security. And this comment that President Trump is unsurprised is very discouraging, at the least.
Absolutely. But let's also talk about European Union and the coalition of the willing. What happened to them? Where are they now in defense of Ukraine?
I mean, they still stand behind Ukraine. They have been very, and once again, I mean, I'm sorry to use this term again and again, but Europeans are more anxious and even more, discouraged with the fact that United States has redefined its foreign policy around Ukraine-Russia conflict to, once again, to this deal-making leverage against President Putin. And clearly, if you look at it from European perspective, they were looking at the whole Greenland issue as an attack on the trust that NATO allies had. They're looking at this breakdown of trust once again, or the impossibility of this peace talk to go anywhere in any positive direction once again as a setback. And then thirdly, the fact that US had earlier proposed a trilateral format wherein the US will sit down as the middle person or a mediator together with Ukraine and Russia, is being looked at by Europe as, once again, them being sent out or put to one side in all of these negotiations. So the fact that NATO consultations or European consultations are not at the center of Russia-Ukraine conflict is a problem. So what I see them as highlighting here is European strategic autonomy, is the fact that there are now countries very actively in Europe, including Germany and Denmark, that are looking towards reconsidering or recalibrating their excessive reliance on the United States for any sort of security guarantees. But what needs to be seen is whether or not Europe can actually put up a very independent front in terms of defending Ukrainian security. At the moment, in the short run, it looks unlikely, but probably that's where their diplomatic maneuvering is going towards.
Okay, Dr. Chadha, stay on with us. Let's move on, give some more information now to our viewers. President Vladimir Putin has also said that Russia's economy has grown by just 1% in 2025, with a sharp slowdown when compared to previous years. This lower growth rate points out the burden of the Ukraine war, which has driven massive military spending and inflationary pressures. Putin has noted that growth was much stronger in 2023 and 24, with GDP increasing by over 4% each year. However, the slowdown in 2025 was expected due to targeted measures aimed at combating inflation. In 2025, inflation reportedly dropped to 5.6%, which is a significant decrease from 9.5% recorded the year before in 2024. Russia's oil and gas revenues, which has been a vital source of government funding, also fell to a 5-year low, partly due to sanctions imposed on it after the Ukraine invasion. Let's listen in to Putin's statements.
Это замедление было не просто ожидаемым, оно, можно сказать, было даже рукотворным. Оно связано с целенаправленными действиями по снижению инфляции. Если в 2024 году рост цен составил 9,5%, то по итогам прошлого года этот показатель удалось сократить до 5,6%. В начале текущего года инфляция, правда, немного ускорилась. На 26 января она составила 6,4% в годовом выражении. Это тоже ожидаемо, в том числе связано с перенастройкой налоговой системы, в частности, с повышением НДС. По оценкам и правительства, и Центрального банка, то есть, уважаемые коллеги, по вашим оценкам, влияние этих изменений на цены будет краткосрочным. Во всяком случае.
Moreover, Putin has also stressed the need to restore domestic economic growth and improve the business climate. He has talked on the importance of increased investment and better labor productivity, setting clear goals for economic policies till 2030. Request Dr. Chadha to join me back in the discussion here. Dr. Chadha, now of course Russia is facing the brunt of waging this war for 4 years. Economy has only grown by 1%. Coupled with that, there's the tariff threats from United States and on any country trading with Russia. What really are the options now left with Russia? How will it continue to wage this war? And even as far as the peace dialogue is concerned, or to halt the war is concerned, there seems to be no real progress.
I agree with everything that you said just before. I mean, we need to look at this from several perspectives once again, because on one hand is this reporting of numbers, which is close to 4% you were mentioning earlier in 2023, with this fall in GDP to 1%. I mean, that's quite a sharp drop for any country trying to sustain a war and then also sustain an economy. And if we look at what the domestic narrative that's coming out of Russia regarding this fall in GDP is that they're trying to curb the inflation. The question is, how exactly are they going to curb it by allowing their economy to go in a free fall like this? I mean, in their defense, what they seem to be hell-bent on is the fact that they are not going to cease military operation. They will continue to, fund this war, which probably could be an indication of them trying to strengthen the economy. How can they invite more foreign domestic investment? Can they invite more investors into the country? Is the investment climate even preferable? There seems to be, not a very positive answer to that effect. Is Russia willing to raise taxes? Is Russia willing to, make their citizens pay for this war? I mean, that seems probably the only way to be able to fund the war, given that there are sanctions, given that Russia doesn't have a lot of partners. The second aspect to it is, what can Russia really continue to sell to the other economies? I mean, when the war began, we know that its military industry was booming at that point, relatively. We know that they were selling energy. They continue to sell energy abroad, but that too has reached some sort of its limits. That too has reached some sort of its, maybe if not production capacity, at least in terms of sales, the ceiling has been hit at some level, because again, we have Trump tariffs already taking effect. And then lastly, when we talk about its conventional military expansion, is it not becoming expensive already? I mean, from what we hear, the interest rates are skyrocketing there as well. So if President Putin, if Russia wants to continue to rely on conventional war, continue to fund this in some way through its domestic economic pushing that the government is putting, for that they need money, and hence looks like a long-term war. I mean, if his vision is up until 2030, it seems very unlikely they'll be able to achieve any of those unless they do recalibrate their war strategy. Now, that can be done in two ways, right? I mean, either they could pivot into a hybrid war. something that could sabotage, just like the attack on Ukrainian energy security. They start hurting the energy infrastructures and critical infrastructure in other countries rather than going on the front lines and funding a common, usual, conventional war. That is usually considered to be cheaper than an actual war that Russia is currently engaged in. We don't know what is the capacity of Russia in that regard and how much willing they are in terms of funding it. But then lastly, comes the question, can they sustain this war? I mean, if it's just about sustaining it, at the current 1% growth rate, potentially they can continue to do this for some more years. Can they scale it up to actually win this war? Probably not possible unless they're willing to take a collapse on their domestic economic output.
Right. Dr. Chadha, of course, thanks very much for joining us with your comments here. And moving on now, viewers, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and President Trump have agreed on the strategic importance of the US-UK airbase in the Chagos archipelago. Both leaders have pledged to work closely to guarantee the base's continued operation. The Chagos deal, finalized in 2025, transferred sovereignty of the islands to Mauritius while keeping UK control of Diego Garcia under a 99-year lease. Trump had previously criticized the agreement as total weakness. The base sits strategically in the Indian Ocean, about halfway between Africa and Indonesia. Starmer and Trump spoke on February 3 and agreed their governments would continue close coordination on the base's future. The White House has not yet commented on the matter. General Savach, who is a geostrategic expert from New Delhi, joins me in this conversation. Retired Major General, thanks very much for joining me. Firstly, do take our viewers through the importance that Chagos archipelago has right now for the UK and for the US at a time when conflicts are being waged in parts of the Middle East, Europe, and even in the Americas.
Very correct. See, as far as the Indian Ocean region is concerned, Chagos Islands have been with Britain for a long time. And this island also has a Diego Garcia. One of the islands, which is Diego Garcia, is very important both for UK and especially to US. US is operating its base from there. And if you see the Middle East, in case if the US has to dominate Middle East, and especially what is happening now between US and Iran, then Diego Garcia plays a major role, because from there its fighters, B-2 bombers, they can operate and then hit anywhere in Middle East. So therefore, as far as US is concerned, Diego Garcia has been extremely important. And this was a British island territory, and though it was of Mauritius, now there was a court order which was passed, and due to which the UK has to give back this Chagos Island. And this process started in 2022, and on 22nd May 2025, the pact was signed that in time to come, the Chagos Island will be given in a phased manner back to Mauritius. However, Diego Garcia will be held for 99 years on a lease, and every year annually about 100 million pound will be given as a fees to Mauritius. Now, as far as this deal was concerned, it was accepted even by US. They appreciated. But of late, Donald Trump starts claiming that it is a sellout. This is not a good deal, because Diego Garcia is extremely important for US and also for UK. So now the UK initially was shaken up. Now UK is also in line and accepting it. Yes, Chagos Islands are very, very important for the security of Indian Ocean and mainly of Middle East, in case there is a requirement of intervention by the US. Now, so this is how things are fanning out. But certainly Diego Garcia is extremely important. It will remain with the US and UK. UK will the one which will be operating that, and US bases will remain there. And Diego Garcia is extremely important for US if it has to dominate the Middle East. Remember, in case the US-Iran war take place, majority of Middle East countries where there are bases of the US have refused to give their airspace.
Yeah.
From where will the aircraft fly then? It is basically from Diego Garcia and also from see from where they will be used Tomahawk missile. So Digo is extremely important to US for its security in Indian Ocean and also to dominate the Middle East, and hence they are not very happy with what the UK has signed a treaty with Mauritius that other than Digo the Chagos Island will be given. The US wanted the complete island should remain with UK, and US will able to utilize not only Digo and other islands also for the security of Indian Ocean and especially of Middle East.
But amidst this, how do you view the fact that Maldives has also now come forward and offered to preserve military operations of the US and UK from the Diego Garcia island?
No, that is correct. See, as far as Diego is concerned, US is not going to leave it in any way because Diego has been extremely important for the security of Indian Ocean region. Remember that as far as the US is concerned, they are having about 800 bases all around the world. And if they have to dominate the complete world, and they have to have all these bases, then Diego is a very old basis of US and is very, very important. Last time also, if you remember, the US B-2 bombers with GBU-57 bombs, they flew from Digo and then they hit Iran nuclear site, which included Isfahan also. So Digo is strategically extremely important for US, though it is a UK territory, it is taken on a lease from now Mauritius, but US also wanted that the Chagos Island, which include Digo should not have given back to Mauritius. But let's see how things pan out. But no doubt about it, the Digo is strategically extremely important for US, and US operate its base from there, and especially to dominate the Middle East. And should the Iran-US war take place and US attacks on Iran, Digo will play a major role, and it also played a major role the last time when the US has basically bombarded or tried to destroy the nuclear facilities in Iran, including Isfahan nuclear site, and the B-2 bombers flew from there, and they have basically released GBU-57 bomber, GBU-B-57 bomb. So all said and done, very important for US, and therefore Digo will remain with US and UK. They will keep on operating, but they will certainly like not only Digo the Chagos Island should not have been given to Mauritius. That is the take of basically Donald Trump, and initially the UK was in a very different thought process. Now they are also in line, and they are also accepting that yes, Chagos Islands as a whole are very, very important for US and UK as far as the strategic importance is concerned in Indian Ocean.
Right, General Sivac, do stay on now. We move on. Viewers, Turkey's President Erdogan has met Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh on February 3. Erdogan has said that Turkey was determined to take bilateral relations to a higher level, focusing on renewable energy and the defense industry. He added that Turkey will continue supporting stability in Syria and work closely with Saudi Arabia to help rebuild the country. Erdogan also reinforced that Turkey would continue to support Syria's stability and will work in cooperation with Saudi Arabia for Syrian reconstruction. The leaders discussed regional and global issues, bilateral relations, energy and defense during the meeting. The two leaders also discussed in detail the latest situation in Yemen and developments in East Africa. Major General retired A.K. Sivac continues to join me in this discussion here. General Sivac, how are you viewing this meeting between Erdogan and Saudi Arabia, with Turkey also now joining and pushing for renewable energy deals?
Very kind. See, as far as Turkey and Saudi are concerned, both want to dominate the Muslim world. Whether it is Erdogan, because Erdogan was trying to become a champion of the Muslim world, and it was trying to challenge the authority of Saudi. Because in this IOC which is there, Islamic organization of 57 countries, then you find Saudi Arabia is dominating along with the UAE. But of late, Erdogan, along with Malaysia and Pakistan, were challenging this hegemony, and Turkey wanted to become champion of the Muslim world. And the relation between Saudi and Turkey were not to the best of their liking. But of late, you find that the relations are improving. Erdogan has now visiting Saudi Arabia. He's met Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and they have discussion. And the discussion is fourfold. One is no doubt about it. Turkey wants energy, and therefore it wants to have a good relation with Saudi. Turkey military-industrial complex is highly developed, and therefore it will like to export some weapons to Saudi. That's very, very important. Third thing is the Syria. Now remember that as far as the Syria is concerned, it was very close to Russia, and the Assad was the one which was almost working as a dictator. Now there is a change which has taken place. Assad has already taken asylum in Russia. Now Al-Sara is the one which is now taken over in Syria. The situation in Syria is very fluid, because everyone thought the stability will come, it has not come. And one of the main reason is that also the Kurds which are there in the especially in southeast and northeast region, which are also having problem with Turkey. So there is a stability factor which is very important in Syria. Yes, Israel also trying to roll down from Golan Heights. That also is a problem. So overall, the Syria still is not been stabilized, and it is also in US interest for the Syria to stabilize. It is also interest of Turkey and also Saudi. Saudi is involved in its reconstruction activity, and Turkey has now accepted that, and Turkey has promised to Salman that we will help them out in reconstruction, and they will try to bring peace in Syria. If the peace comes in Syria, it's very important to have peace, especially in Middle East. If Syria is disturbed, the whole remain. Remember what was happening earlier. The Iran was sending weapons to Hezbollah. The route was Iraq, Syria. It was starting from Iran, then to Iraq, then to Syria, then to Lebanon. Now Syria is gone. The Syria is now with the regime which is pro-US now, and though the Russia is still managing maintaining two bases, one naval and one air force, but certainly Syria is now more close to US, and US wants stability to come, and Saudi is involved in the reconstruction activity. Turkey was having problem with the Kurds, but Turkey is also now promised to help Saudi for reconstruction, and they want stability there, because any stability there will help the complete region. I suppose that is the take, and now it looks like that Turkey and Saudi were not having best of the relation earlier, because Turkey also wanted to become a champion of the Muslim world. It wanted to challenge the hegemony of Saudi and UAE in OIC, but of late it looks like that both need to come together. Both are dependent on each other. Turkey needs more energy, which it can get from Saudi, and in return it gives a lot of weapon system, because Turkey is very, you can say, advanced and developed in industrial military complex, especially in drones, which it gave to also Ukraine and also given to Azerbaijan.
Right, General Sivaj, thank you very much for your comprehensive response on this. And we move on now, viewers. French prosecutors have requested a 5-year ban on running for public office for the far-right leader Marine Le Pen in her appeal trial over the misuse of European Union funds. This leaves the question of Le Pen's 2027 presidential election candidacy wide open if the appeals court, when it delivers its ruling in the coming month following the prosecutor's requests, as it has no obligation to do so. The initial ruling in March 2025 was a major setback for Le Pen, as it banned her from running for office for years, effectively immediately. And viewers, that's a wrap on this edition of the World Report on NewsX World. Stay tuned for all international news and updates.